Welcome to Forum 360 on Fusion, your PBS channel. This is Mark Welfley, your host today. Thank you for joining us for our global outlook with a local view. What do Jack Nicklaus, John Glenn, Bob Hope, Woody Hayes, and my guest today have in common? Well, I'll give you a hint. They all have participated in an 84-year-old tradition at The Ohio State University, considered by many to be one of the most memorable traditions in college band history. Did you get the answer? They have all been selected to dot the I, punctuating the completion of Script Ohio, the Ohio State Marching Band's signature formation. Dotting the I in Script Ohio was first performed on October 10, 1936, in a game between the Buckeyes and the University of Pittsburgh. The honor is reserved for 4th and 5th year sousaphone players, but should be noted here that the first member to dot the I was in fact a trumpeter. My guest today is Kevin Smith, guest speaker, a graduate from The Ohio State University, and an MBA, with an MBA in the University of Akron. Kevin is the director of the Institute for Leadership at the University of Akron, and perhaps, most importantly, an I-dotter. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I have to get something out of the way first. The very first I-dotter was a trumpeter.
Right.
The honor generally is bestowed on someone who plays the sousaphone, but you play the tuba.
Right.
So how does that all come together?
That was a great recap, and so you took me down memory lane there with the history of the marching band. I can't believe it's been 84 years. Obviously, I wasn't around for most of that, but to continue on the tradition with the Ohio State University Marching Band continues to be one of the greatest honors in my life. The trumpet player was John Brungart in 1936, and at that time, Eugene Weigel was the director of the marching band, and he saw a skywriting in the plane, a plane skywriting in the sky one day, and saw, I think, the word Pepsi being written, and he thought, well, why can't the marching band do that? So you have to understand, at the time, marching bands didn't do a whole lot. They came out of military corps units, and they basically were parade units. And then Purdue, in 1909, made the first block formation ever. They made a P, and that was pretty unique. Ohio State made the word hello and moved that formation down the field and made the first ever moving word in history. And so the idea of a football band becoming innovative was born out of the Big Ten. 1936 came along, while Michigan actually spelled the word Ohio in a visit one time, I think in like 1934, they walked out to the spot, stopped, and the word looked like a cursive Ohio. There's a picture of that. They claim that it took us 2 years to figure it out, but you know how that goes. 1936 happened, and then he just made this thing. It was the actually script to write out. It was the first occurrence of script writing in marching band history ever. After a few games of this, John Brungart was just consistently the same I-dotter. There was no fanfare to it. And then at one point, out of nowhere, for no real reason whatsoever, Eugene Weigel, the director, said, hey, you, switch places with that guy. And then that happened. It wasn't until the late 1940s that it became a bigger deal. It was after the war. And so they had this idea, like whoever dot the I, it wasn't a big fanfare. And then there was a tuba player, I forget his name, but he went to the top of the I, and there was no celebration. He just marched to the place, and he messed up. He went out too early, and what happened was he just took that time and he made a big bow to one side, and he did a military kick and made a big bow to the other side. And the fans went crazy, and that's when the tradition of it becoming more of a memorable icon was born.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. So we hear a lot about the Ohio State University football team and its reputation, and
Right.
the band is equally impressive and creative. Like, what's it like to play in front of 105,000 people in the Ohio State Marching Band?
I mean, for a band member, it's one of the greatest thrills ever. I mean, you don't get a lot of opportunity to do something like that. And I think when you're doing it, you know, one thing, as you've noted, I work in higher education now, and I'm a big fan of the college student experience period. I think that a marching band at any university or high school is probably one of the greatest leadership lessons, team development, life lessons you can ever learn. I mean, there's so much I can get into on that. So I think if you're at a university, it's great that you're doing it. Ohio State really has a unique culture, and I've been to other universities as well. But what makes Ohio State unique is that, you know, you're part of something bigger than just the band. I mean, so when you're trying out for the marching band at Ohio State, you're not thinking that you're just trying out for the marching band at Ohio State. You think about how you're becoming part of something that when someone watches the game, the football team, they're watching the bigger experience. They don't go to the game just to see the team. They go to the game to be part of the day. The cheerleaders, the band, the skull session. And when you take the field as a marching band member, as a young 19 to 22-year-old student, you're getting ready to go down this ramp and into the stadium, 105,000 people who are getting ready to just open up this present of a day. And there are times that we talked about this as college students, and we would kind of impart this upon every member, was that when you go down that ramp, take a look around as you're playing, because you're going to see someone point to their grandchild, someone point to their son or their daughter, and they're going to point this out, and they're going to be explaining what's so special about this, and you're creating what's special for them on that day. That's what makes it cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So your journey to become a member of the Ohio State Marching Band, can you share with us the path that you took?
Yeah, it's kind of like a cautionary tale in some ways, because I wouldn't recommend people pursue this path to college, but in that it is what it is, and it literally changed my life. Ohio State changed my life, and I think it's not Ohio State that has to change someone's life. It's college can change your life. So that's the moral of my story is. So it was November of 1998 was my senior year of high school. And, you know, I have a great family. My parents, you know, were born in a small town. College wasn't an option for them. And, you know, they had nice jobs and all. And so obviously the world changed quite a bit between, you know, 1960 and 1999. And so college became a little bit more of what you might need in your life. And so I didn't really have an idea to go to college. It wasn't really something I was going to do. I was actually a trumpet player for 7 years before I became a tuba player. The only reason I became a tuba player was kind of like the Hey You thing. Our one tuba player in our high school, it was Norwalk High School, the Truckers. Our sousaphone player graduated, so my band director said, Mr. Carboni said, hey, you play the bass guitar, right? Yeah, I said, yeah. He said, well, do you want to play the tuba? It's kind of the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. One's cool, one's not. So I said, sure, you know, I'll give it a shot. And what appealed to me was I could be the only person to do it. Fast forward to my senior year of high school. You know, my friends, Steve Ludwig and his parents, who were really, really big part of my life, they were in the band. You know, he was in the band too. And it was a senior year. He said, hey, we have an extra ticket to the Ohio State game. I had never been to Columbus in my life. You want to go? No, thanks. But the band's great. Never seen him. No, thank you. But the team's really good. No, it's all right. Don't watch football, you know, at the college level. And they said, you know, why don't you come down and just check it out? If you don't, you know, they have 28 tuba players. Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. So we go down to this game. The first thing I see was the skull session, and that's when it all started. I come home that night after the game, and I told my mom and dad I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to Ohio State. I'm going to be in the band. My parents would always support me about anything I would do. I didn't really have a lot of things I wanted to do. But they said, all right, well, yeah, whatever you need to do, we'll support you. I don't think they took me seriously until they saw me painting lines in my backyard, 5 yards by 5 yards by 5 yards, and I was practicing. I started running, getting in shape. I took my stuff seriously. And then, so November of your senior year is not the ideal time to decide you're going to go to college. And at the time, I just found any resource I could to get myself there. I started driving 200 miles twice a day to go practice with veteran members. And I ended up I get accepted to Ohio State. I made it, but we didn't know how we were going to pay for it. We had some people along the way that were trying to show us how to do things. I made it as an alternate, and that's someone that it could take the spot of a regular. 2 games later, I made a regular position, which is kind of like starting. Mm-hmm. And then I never lost that spot for the next few years, and that's kind of how you get tracked up to become that IDOT. Along the way, I had to figure out what I major in, what I wanted to do, and then I started, and everything about Ohio State's marching band made me successful in college.
Mm-hmm. So how were you selected to dot the I during a regular season game?
That's a longer story, but essentially, there's 192 people that always march. So the band you see on the field every single Saturday is different. 192 of those people are in regular positions, and then there's 33 alternates. And every single week, those alternates are watching the regulars to see how well they're doing. And the people that don't try as hard or maybe are messing up are the people that get challenged every Monday. So every single Monday, you get a new set of music that you have to memorize by Friday at 4 o'clock. And if you don't have it near perfectly memorized, you can lose your spot. If your uniform's not great, you can lose your spot. If you don't do well in the field, you can be challenged and lose your spot. So every Monday, it's a different band. And so for a tuba player, if you lose your spot, you don't just lose your spot until you win it back. You have to, your rank goes down. Mm-hmm. So your rank is determined by how many times you start. And this all adds up collectively until the spring of your 3rd year of college. And then you get together with all the 4th year and 5th year members, how many there are, and then you decide based on the schedule of next year what game you're going to dot the I at if you make the band your 4th year. So you still have to make it. And yes, there have been occasions where people have tried out, picked their dot, tried out for the band, not made it, and their I dot had to be selected by somebody else.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
My guest today is Kevin Smith, who is the director at the Institute for Leadership at the University of Akron and a famous I-dotter, which is an individual musician who has dotted the I in Script, Ohio, which is what I'd like to go to next. Kevin, I have a picture here that Kevin has provided to me. He's not only an I-dotter, he actually dotted the I in the in the University, the Ohio State University's national championship game in 2003 against the Miami Hurricanes. And so I'd like you to tell us the story of how you got a chance to dot the I in this national championship game.
Yeah, that takes me back because what I can't believe is that long ago, but the thing that made that year unique was the context for that year. That year was one of the first actual true national championships for college football. So that's when the BCS was invented. The AP poll wasn't dictating who the championship was anymore. And we had just had a year where we went to no bowl game in 1999. So we went from a dismal record in 1999 to 2000, and when Jim Tressel came to Ohio State, his first year was okay. The second year, that was his second year of coach. Before that, we hadn't been to a national championship since 1968 or 69, so it had been a pretty good dry spell for Ohio State University. That was a magical year because we didn't really think we were ever going to get there. Not to mention this particular game. The way that you dot the I at a national championship game is different than how you would do it for your regular season. Anyone that's an eligible I-dotter, so any 4th year or 5th year senior, gets to compete in this age-old tradition called a dot off. I'm going to say that again, it's called a dot off. I didn't come up with that term, but it's a really old tradition, and essentially any 4th or 5th year member can compete using the routine, they're playing, how they perform, how they look, even to probably a little bit, I would call it politics, but how you would present yourself and how you would represent other people. That particular year, there were 16 of us, 4th and 5th year members. Now there's only 28 sousaphone players total, so we had a pretty heavy 4th and 5th year members. So now, the funny thing about this was for me, you've heard my story about how I had to basically come out of nowhere in this group. A lot of these folks are born and bred. I mean, they come from great high schools like Hudson. They come from Dublin and all around Columbus, and they basically know they're going to dot the I since they're like 6 years old. I decided in November of my senior year. By the time I got to this point, I'm like, there is no way I am not going to at least put my best effort in for this. So I had the drum major at the time, Adam Prescott. I would work with him on the side to show me how to do the strut and everything like the drum major. So I was out there secretly practicing him. So by the time we did the dot off, I got very lucky. I mean, I was competing with some really, really great people. So about any of those folks, I got lucky, and I got to pick, get that dot, and then it kind of turned into this fanfare, and and that was the last time I dotted the I. So I actually gave up all my 5th year dots. I figured, what else am I going to do at this point?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I've seen in the research that you've sent me and that I've done, you've written numerous articles where you've kind of woven the fabric from your college experience and from dotting the I through to the work that you do now at the University of Akron, working with the students that are there and in leadership. Can you share with me that translation?
Yeah, sure. I think, I appreciate the conversation about the marching band. To this day, I continue to serve on the alumni board at Ohio State with the Ohio State Marching Band and give back how I can. But I think that the key thing here is, while it is such a cool honor to be a student, to get to do something that you could be literally anywhere, and a 60-year-old man wants his picture with you, and I get to sign some autographs for literally astronauts from the Columbia Space Shuttle. That is really neat, and for a band geek, wow! I mean, what a cool thing.
Sure.
But really, this really is something where, when I work with every student, you think about the fine line between what you could be and what you are in life, and hopefully what you are is a great thing. But college, to me, to this day, remains the single greatest change agent for any person ever. What I love about the University of Akron is we have this business school that's got 2 accreditations at the highest level, and it makes us in the top 1.15% of all business schools in the world. And it's pretty neat to have Northeast Ohio with so many good things. But any student can come there, and you can come from a background where your mom might be working in a restaurant, your dad might be delivering bread, which is a great profession. But if you want to be able to become an accountant or a CPA or a finance guru or a marketing professional and just change your life dramatically, you can come to a university to this day and still do that. I don't think there's any better honor. And so I look back at my life and think, there are people that helped me when I was trying to get into college, that even though I knew I wanted to be in the band, I couldn't have been successful at it if it wasn't for the people around me that did that. And I'll never forget, there was a man named Mike Johnson who was he was a financial aid out. This is his second career, right? So he was retired from like Marines and recruiting, and he looked at me and my parents, who had no college experience whatsoever, and he can see the nervousness because it's a big deal to go to college, and it's financially, it could be very difficult. He looked at us and said, you guys can do this. And the stress melted away from my parents and for me, because it was the first time that someone who we saw representing the university said, it's going to be okay, we'll find a way to help you. And I know I get the Director of Leadership Institute and all that. I still think that college is more about institutes and centers and academia and all those things. It's about the college student should have a remarkable experience. They should feel like they're supported, and they should feel like that if they make good decisions with the help of people that work there, they should be able to do almost anything they want to do in their lives. And I still think that colleges, on the whole, provide that service. And I see that when I'm not doing my leadership type job, my job is to help make sure that every student that wants to be successful can be, no matter where they're from.
In doing some research, I had read about the impact that music has on the lives of leaders, and how graduates from all universities who've played in the marching bands have gone on to be captains of industry and civic leaders and noted engineers and architects. You mentioned about how music has contributed. Say a little bit more about how music has contributed to your own personal career success.
Yeah. I think it's awareness. I mean, I think I think the one thing that any marching band, and especially one like Ohio State, will do for you, if you're, it makes you spatially aware. It makes you think about your place among other people. It makes you think about, if you're all trying to accomplish a shared goal together, then playing the loudest is not going to do that. There's a time and a place for you to play the loudest. There's a time and a place for you to be in line. There's a time and a place for you to be out of line and maybe take a bow, right? In Ohio State, if you're at literally an inch out of line, someone's going to notice, right? And if your hat comes off, someone will notice. And you can be just a little bit louder than someone else, and someone's going to notice, because that's what it is, that cohesion. At Ohio State, at any marching band, you can't, or any sort of musical performance, you have to be thinking not just about the notes that you're playing, but you have to be thinking about the next 5 or 6 notes you're going to be playing. You can't be just thinking about the steps that you're taking. You have to be thinking about the next 5 or 6 steps you're going to be taking while you're taking those steps, while you're playing that song, while it's all from memory, while it's with the people around you. Because in Script Ohio, for example, watch one of those. I challenge anyone watching this just to go to YouTube and watch Script Ohio. If you are off one step, you will run into the person there, and that whole script can be thrown off. And it has happened before. We don't like to talk about it, but there has been times when one person can mess the whole thing up. So I think that there's this thing called multiple intelligences and like multiple IQs. And I had a student named Maria Roth, who she's graduated now. She's a successful CPA. She did a leadership project with us, and her leadership project was to help a local nonprofit called Matrix Performing Arts, which is a drum line that runs out of Akron. And at the time, they were not a registered 501c3, so she wanted to use her academic experience in becoming an accountant to help this young organization turn into an established 501c3. And she wrote her whole paper about why these things were important. And I learned so much from her, but it helped articulate that, music education, liberal arts education, all these things where you are thinking about your place in the bigger picture and how to be aware and how to conduct yourself appropriately, how to discipline yourself appropriately, and all those great things. It doesn't have to be a marching band for this. It can be anything where you're thinking about your place in the series of a whole. And that's society. Yeah, it's really cool.
In the couple minutes we have remaining, I also noted that you're the chairman of the board for a social services organization called Life is Good No Matter What.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about your involvement in Life is Good No Matter What? I found it very interesting.
Oh, sure. Well, thanks for bringing that up. That's Life is Good No Matter What is a small Northeast Ohio-based nonprofit, very small, that has one central mission. It's to help adults with cancer of any kind at any stage. And we don't grant wishes. What we do is we just take the fact that cancer just disrupts life. It could be a very devastating thing from the moment someone's diagnosed to whatever stage they may be incurring, and its impact on the family. There are so many great organizations out there that do everything from wigs to yoga to research to education. We don't do any of those things. We just take the moment to give someone a break. With COVID-19, we've transitioned from giving people these kind of vacations or escapes that we call them to various places. It could be as small as a dinner with your family, to a night at a hotel, to a Grand Canyon tour. We've done all those things. Almost 70 of these. We've transitioned to what we call deeds. So now we are paying utility bills, we're sending dinners to people, we're sending flowers, and it's not for people that are, they don't have to be on stage 4 and the end is near. We have done that. We want to think about the fact that this could be for someone and their children. For right now, we just paid someone's utility bill, or I think we're sending dinner to someone's house here soon, and we also realized they had a 13-year-old daughter, and we realized that young woman is going through a lot too, so we're going to do a little extra to help her. And it's just a board of made up of doctors from the Cleveland Clinic to social service agents to folks that just want to help, because sometimes when devastating things happen, you don't know what to do, so people do nothing. It's easy. We try to do something.
Do you have a website?
We do. It's lifeisgoodnomatterwhat.org.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. They have performed Michael Jackson's Moonwalk Superman's emblem, and the floss. Yes, I said the floss. The Ohio State University Band continues to push the envelope for visual and musical entertainment. The many traditions of the best damn band in the land are sewn proudly into the fabric of our lives in Northeast Ohio. I would like to thank Kevin Smith for dotting the I in our Script Ohio show today. And with that, we will add a period to the end of this show. Thank you for joining us on Forum 360.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.